Hi everyone, I'm Laura, I'm this year's Publicity Director. And I would thank everyone for coming to this webinar, but this isn't actually the real thing. We're re-recording the first half because our recording of it didn't save, but all the presentations will be the same, so you won't be missing out of anything from the first recording. But yeah, thanks to everyone who did attend to the first recording, and thank you to the committee members who have given up their time to re-record their presentations. So the purpose of this webinar is to hopefully give a broad introduction to CDI, so kind of the structure of the organisation, our values, and how we implement our work. And the plan for the evening is to start with an overall introduction from Tads, our director, and then move on to a brief introduction to each project stream from the project directors. So we'll start with WASH, and then education, health, and entrepreneurship. And then we'll wrap up with any questions. So over to you, Tads.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Laura. So I'll just quickly get up my presentation. Okay, is that sharing? Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm Tads Holmes. I've been the director of CDI since November 2019. So I've actually been with CDI for almost 3 years now, and I've been with CDI through almost my entire degree. And as I've kind of developed as a student with my degree, CDI has always been in the background and helping me develop as a development professional as well. So to give a brief introduction to who we are at CDI, we are a UK-based student-led charity that collaborates with Tanzanian students at our partner organization, Kite Dar es Salaam, to implement innovative, sustainable, community-led projects in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. So CDI has been about for 7 years now. So it was originally founded in 2013 by 2 students, Patrick and Kelvin, who they felt frustrated a bit with the types of projects that students usually get involved with in terms of international development, volunteering. And these are common topics that come up in the development sector, is the topic of volunteerism. So people who are volunteering, not really to they don't really end up impacting positively so much on the end beneficiaries, but rather that it's more like a service that people can purchase to sort of feel good about themselves, but ends up being more of a transactionary type relationship rather than collaborative or really pushing for sustainable projects that are pushed by local communities to benefit themselves. So CDI hopes to stand in the way of that and try to change how student volunteering is done. We want to both provide a platform for students to take what they learn in the classroom and apply it in the field and have positive impact, but also finding ways that we're not doing what's been done before with student volunteering, finding where students can leverage their abilities to the most to then have positive impact on the ground and have a rewarding experience in that way. So the ultimate aim is to then pilot innovative projects that have a positive and sustained impact on the ground, while also providing a rewarding professional experience for students both in the UK and in Tanzania, which really promotes their personal development and hopefully prepares them well for going into the international development sector in the future, and can inform that experience can then inform them in their future work. So to provide some examples of what CDI is doing to change the way that student volunteering is done, is I've brought up some images here of some ongoing projects in Dar es Salaam, and what's different about these images here is that CDI is actually not involved in this work at the moment. This work has all been built upon what CDI has done in the past, and now local organizations have taken over previous CDI projects to promote them and sustain them into the future. So the pictures on the left are actually images of the WASA workers building simplified sewage networks in the Vingunguti district in Dar es Salaam. So this is a project that CDI ran for 5 years, basically since its inception, where CDI students and volunteers, they identified a problem in Vingunguti in Dar es Salaam, where pit latrines for in the community, when the wet season came, they tend to overflow and they would contaminate the local environment. And by implementing sewage systems, that waste instead can be carried away to a local sewage pond, and therefore when these latrines would no longer overflow, because it's now all that waste is being taken away to a different area, to a sewage pond. And this is an example of where CDI students, they found a system, a simplified sewage system that had worked in another area, I think it was in India, and adapted it for the Tanzania context, worked with local students, worked with local stakeholders and engineers to then implement this really sort of simple, cheap solution to a problem facing that area. And after 5 years, the project has now been handed over to a local water authority, who is now continuing to maintain and expand this network of sewage systems, linking up toilets in that area and providing better sanitation into the future. And this is an example of what we want to achieve, is where we might bring some ideas and some funding and ultimately catalyze the abilities of Tanzanians on the ground to then carry these projects forward and scale them and have even wider impact, while also sustaining them, because these are now being driven by the local communities. Similarly, on the right-hand side, this is Dare to Change Tanzania. This is a program run by Dr. Tanzania, but this program used to be Dar Enterprise, run by CDI. So this was run for 3 years between 2014 and 2017, and this was an entrepreneurship course that CDI ran to promote the skills and training for young people that have just come out of university, have been a few years out of university and want to start a business or a social enterprise that can tackle issues in their local areas also. And this was a successful project with 3 iterations of this course running each summer. And then Dr. Tanzania has taken over this project and has carried on implementing it up to this day. And the picture here is of 10 entrepreneurs that graduated and started this course in 2018 and started their own businesses, and are therefore, the impact of this course is carried on into the future, because not only have new businesses been set up as a result of the CDI's running of the course, but because Dr. Tanzania has carried on running this course as a local partner, it continues to have impact into the future. And again, this is an example of how CDI students can take good ideas and pilot them, and then prove concepts of new development projects, and then hand them over to local partners to then carry on and sustain into the future. So more broadly, CDI and Kite Dar es Salaam, our student partners on the ground, we've been working since 2014 in the areas of social entrepreneurship, health, education, and water, sanitation, and hygiene. And I also want to strongly, even more strongly say that we would not be able to do what we can do without our partners at Kite Dar es Salaam. So Kite Dar es Salaam is our equivalent organization. It's like CDI, but based in Dar es Salaam and run by students in Dar es Salaam. And it's their sort of abilities in implementing these projects and their ongoing leadership also that allows us to be able to do the work we do. So that partnership is so important for CDI to be able to catalyze stuff that's going on the ground, because ultimately Tanzanians are the ones that are implementing these projects in their communities to help other Tanzanians. So to briefly outline what the project cycle looks like, it starts off with the identification of a problem and developing a solution. So these tends to be grounded in research. It takes a while to really grasp what the true problems are and asking the right questions in this part of the process. You can identify superficial issues like children don't have enough education, or they may be struggling with the transition from primary to secondary school in education, or if people have bad health, you can look at things like cancer rates and rates of communicable diseases as metrics for identifying a problem. But it's delving deeper and understanding what's really causing the expression of these problems. And once we have a good understanding, we can try and then to ideate potential solutions. And this is where a lot of our projects are at the moment, is that they are ideating new solutions to tackle problems they've identified throughout the year. Then during our implementation periods, we try to pilot these projects first on a small scale in the first year of a project, and perform monitoring, evaluation, and learning practices to then understand, like, have we addressed the problem in this pilot, what can be improved, and what can we take forward into the future. And if the project if there's a proof of concept and the pilot has been successful, we can iterate on these ideas, develop them further, start speaking with local stakeholders also, and then try to hand over these projects to a local partner who can then sustain them into the future. On the other hand, sometimes we might have a 2 or 3 year project, which is we've done proof of concept in some ways, but it may be that there's no sustainable model for the project, or haven't found the right partners. And in these cases, if we have the flexibility within our organization, that projects that don't work or do not have scope for sustainability can be decommissioned as well, which sometimes may appear as a failure, but really this is all a process of learning. And part of what CDI's appeal might be is our flexibility in this aspect, that while we have been able to promote really successful projects, we are able to learn a lot through our failings as well. Going forward into the future, looking at where our project ideas come from, and we want to put further emphasis on 3 main areas in this process. We want, of course, students are at the heart of everything we do. We want to promote platforms for students with ideas about projects to come together, perform research, ideate together, and ultimately end up working together on the ground in Tanzania to then implement these ideas in terms of pilots and perhaps beyond that. And that's always been the core of what we want to do. But there's also other channels we are opening up now, where we're speaking with researchers both in Tanzania and in Cambridge, and trying to leverage our contacts as students to create stronger links with the research community, to have good grounding of understanding in development issues and potential solutions for these issues, but may lack implementation capacity, where students can then come in with their flexible approaches to take research outputs and implement them on the ground as project outputs that then have positive and sustained impacts for the local communities there. And finally, we also are trying to foster greater connections with the community and provide channels for people in Dar es Salaam to promote their project ideas, perhaps through community hackathons in Dar es Salaam, to listen to people that know the community the best, and therefore know their problems and issues facing their communities the best, and providing a platform where we can act as catalysts for these people to then go on and set up an NGO or set up their own development projects who then address the issues in their community. So these are the sort of the three pillars for where CDI wants to work in the future. Is that promoting students to work on development projects, working closely with researchers, but also working very closely with the community as well. And I thought I'd give a final mention to how COVID has impacted CDI. And obviously COVID has been very challenging, especially in the charity sector, for ongoing operations such as fundraising and various other things. And it has added a lot of constraints to our work. So usually we travel to Dar es Salaam, we take a group of volunteers from the UK side, there's a group of volunteers on the Tanzanian side that work together during the summer months between July and September, piloting and implementing projects. And obviously, because of COVID, this has not been possible. And it may not be possible for the next 12 months until a vaccine is developed or, situations change. But it has accelerated our sort of movement towards CDI acting much more as a supportive force, as a catalyzing force, but not as a driver for implementation. Rather, this has provided a lot more space for the Tanzanians to step up, take ownership of these projects, and CDI working much more in terms of the supportive capacity in fundraising and research and strategy, things that we can do well here from the UK, but providing space for the Tanzanians to do what they do best, which is ultimately working with the community, and they can take ownership, much more ownership of these projects into the future. So that's my very quick introduction, and I think I'll pass over to Georgia to speak about the trustees and their role in the organisation.
Thank you so much, Tads, for that introduction. So I am one of the I sit on the board of trustees for CDI. I was one of the first student volunteers for CDI in its founding year in 2014, and in 2015 I was the Entrepreneurship project director, and I then went on to be a member of our board of trustees. I am now a management consultant, so I work at a global management consultancy firm and work part-time voluntarily for CDI's board. And CDI's board works a little bit differently from a typical board of any organisation or even a charity would, given the mission that Tab mentioned of changing the way that student volunteering is done. And one of the great things about CDI is that the students have a huge amount of agency and a huge amount of control and direction as to the direction that the organisation moves forward in. And that's a really critical part of CDI. So instead of being a board where we might dictate or direct what the students are going to be doing each year, every year the new set of student volunteers and committee determine for themselves where they're going to have the most impact. And I think this is really makes it a really interesting role on the board, because the role that we play is more in the area of supporting. We play a lot of role in terms of supporting the student volunteers as something that it's often a very challenging role, particularly in those leadership roles coming into CDI to take on whilst completing your studies full time. We help to coach the leadership of the organisation, and we also provide some forms of guidance and advice, as we have a group of very sort of senior members on the board who have expertise within their kind of particular fields and within international development. And there's one thing that I wanted to add as well to, so that's kind of what the board does, and there's one thing that I want to add to Tad's introduction. And one of the founding kind of statements or ideologies that we had when CDI was founded was based on this African proverb, which says that the giving hand is always above the receiving hand. And it just shows this power dynamic that occurs at any moment when we decide to give. And any moment when we decide to give, we are instantly assuming a position of power above by somebody else. And what's really unique about CDI is we're trying to dismantle that. We're really trying to change the way that the industry works. And the reason is because in CDI there is no sole giver and there is no sole receiver. And that I hope that every student that enters this program also receives so much in return, in terms of the skills that you're going to acquire, in terms of the opportunities that you'll get, and in terms of the network and the awesome people that you'll meet along the way. And so we have a really peer-to-peer led development model. And this is something that, you know, TADS and previous directors have been really driving, in terms of having a much more equal partnership between Kite Dar es Salaam, who are, as Tad mentioned, this group of university students based in Tanzania, and between the Cambridge University volunteer team. And that's something that is not really found anywhere else, and is something that is a real core and center of what we do in CDI. So awesome. Thanks, Tad. I'll hand over now to the next section.
So thanks, Georgia, for that introduction to the Board of Trustees. We'll move on to Sophie now and her introduction to the WASH project stream. Thanks, Sophie.
Okay. Right, so can you see the screen?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so yeah, okay, fine. Okay, so hi, my name's Sophie. I'm a fourth year chemical engineer, so I graduated this year, and I joined CDI this academic year in November. So I was attracted to CDI because of all the reasons that Tad's mentioned before. But I was particularly attracted to the WASH project because one of my interests is looking at a small scale technology and how that can be implemented within a community for development and development purposes, and how we can sort of manage and build systems upon this innovative technology. So the WASH project, as Taz mentioned before, had a very successful project stream, which is the Simplified Sewerage Network based in Gimingangouti. So just seeing how that project and how much impact that's had on the community and how successful the handover has been has really really attracted me towards the WASH project and encouraged me to hopefully find a project that will have the same impact. So as I mentioned, in terms of the next steps for the WASH, the plan for the WASH project this year, we had the Simplified Sewerage Network, which has now pretty handed over. So this was the first year that we weren't directly managing that project, and we almost had like a blank slate for the WASH project for myself and my co-director Hani to come up with new ideas and just really take the WASH project to a new direction. So this year we came up with two project streams, and so I'm going to spend this presentation explaining those two project streams to you and what you can expect for how that will develop over the next few years. The first project stream is the last 100 meters. So this was ideated during the committee trip to Tanzania, to Dar over the Christmas vacation, and basically when we were in talks with BRAC, a charity, a large charity that has offices based in Dar, they talked about this collaboration with on a research project with Lancaster University, and it was basically a research project investigating and looking at methods to reduce fecal contamination in the last 100 meters of drinking, the journey of drinking water. So that means from the standpipe to the endpoint, to the end user. within, say, within informal settlements. And so after we came back from that trip, we got into contact with the lead researcher on this research project, and he's explained the research project to us and kind of gave us an overview of what sort of things he was looking into. So the basic premise was fecal contamination is you can almost look at it from two sides. So one side is the behavior side. So what are people doing to encourage contamination of their drinking water? So this could be not washing hands properly, not washing their equipment properly, or the facilities they use to transport the water. And the other side is substandard toilets, which can then leak fecal material into the drinking water source, as they're often located very close together. So this research project the data has been collected and is in the process of writing up this publication. But we saw this collaboration as an opportunity to take this forward and apply it to an area which we have a lot of on the ground knowledge. So for this, the WASH, CDI and the WASH project in particular has worked a lot within the Vingunguti community. We know a lot of the community members. We understand how the community works. So with this on the ground experience, we can bring this to the research project and take forward any findings and apply it specifically within this community. So this was the premise of the last 100 meter project. And so the plan was for over this summer and the next summer is to plan and implement a research proposal. So this is talking about identifying a problem. We're in the process of, not only have we, there's a lack of clean and safe drinking water. That is the problem, but we're looking more into detail. What are the reasons for that? What are the main factors that causes fecal contamination in that last 100 meters of the drinking water, its life cycle, within the Vingunguti community? What particular behavioural aspects does members of the Vingunguti community have, which impacts, which then increases the risk of fecal contamination? So that is the plan for this summer. This is a really interesting project to work on because, it gives you, not only do you have guidance from experts within the development within this field, who you can use that to learn how research projects work within the development sector, but also give you an opportunity to become familiar with, to know how to manage and to use research techniques. For example, community mapping, which is used to track the community behavioural patterns, and other techniques such as that. So this is going to be a really interesting project, a research project that can then maybe after a few years be taken on into a more implementation phase. So our second project stream is the SWASH project. So SWASH stands for School Wash, and this is aiming to improve access to hand washing facilities and soap within schools. So the current problem is that some schools don't have access to hand washing facilities and sanitation products, and we are again focusing on the Vingunguti community for the reasons I've explained before, and we're focusing on 4 primary schools based within this district. So we have collaborated with the head teachers. We're in contact with the head teachers from these 4 primary schools, working very closely with them, constantly seeking their feedback and advice and incorporating it within our work. And we're currently in the process of, along with the KITE side, based on the ground, to assess their current facilities and really identify what exactly they need in order to improve their hand washing facilities and access to sanitation products. So for this has now been moved into an implementation phase for this September. So this will be entirely implemented on the kite side. So it will be the Kite Wash PD managing 7 volunteers. And what they plan to do in September is to firstly look at construction, so identifying and potentially implementing facilities on the school site. So this is a great opportunity in the future to collaborate with engineers. So it's very engineering focused, and it gives you opportunity to collaborate with student engineers based in Tanzania to design engineering structures. The second sort of area we're looking into is hygiene education. So that's organising washing and soap making workshops. So this is we have a lot of guidance from a charity based on the ground called Sawa Tanzania, who's worked for a long time within this area. So from there, although this is a project that is only within its first year, we have a lot more understanding of what could go wrong and what needs to be done to avoid any common problems because of our collaboration with this charity on the ground. So they are helping us to run these hand washing workshops. And another area we're looking into, which is very important, is the long-term sustainability of the project. So once, say, the facilities have been built, who's going to maintain and operate them? And so we are in the process of thinking long-term and coming up with plans in order to ensure the long-term success of our project. So this is one of the things that we're always thinking about constantly in both our project streams. So those are, it's a brief overview into the 2 project streams we're looking into. So Hania and I are looking into. So if you want any more detail on these 2 projects, feel free to email us. I'll just leave our yeah, here we go. I'll leave our CRS ID on the screen. And if you want any more information about previous projects that the WASH project has helped to manage and implement, feel free to email us. So I'll hand over to Gerard now, who is the Health Project Director.
Hello, everyone. So as Sophie said, my name is Gerard Kinning. I am this year's current Health Project Director. Thank you for taking the time to come to this presentation, to listen to this recording. We really appreciate your interest in what it is that CDI has to offer and what it is that we're doing. So to talk a little bit about what the health team has been up to this past summer, it should probably first be said that if you are thinking about health work in the developing world or health work really anywhere right now, your first response would be you're probably doing something related to COVID. There was an initial effort at the beginning of the spring sort of Easter term to do work around COVID. Particularly, we were looking at disseminating health information relating to hand washing, social distancing, mental health around quarantining, as well as looking for fundraising opportunities and grants and money that could be used towards getting PPE, food, necessary resources to members of the Dar es Salaam community. In mid-July, the country was declared COVID-free by the government, and our efforts in these areas had to be put on pause. So what we have ended up doing is going back to some of the original plans that we had with a little bit more of a remote flavor to them. So the 3 major project streams that we have been working on are looking at health information dissemination through partner organizations. So what this is, and I'll talk a little bit more about each specifically, is looking to Shule Direct, which is an internet site and web phone application that secondary school students in Dar es Salaam use to disseminate health information through their platform. We are helping with an indoor air pollution organization, helping them begin on-ground research in the Dar es Salaam area. It's called VESMA, And finally, we are working at creating soap making clinics. This is a little bit of a cross-stream project going on between all of the different project groups within CDI, but has been taken under Health's banner a little bit for now and potentially into the future. So the first project stream, health information dissemination, we are primarily looking at the moment, we've been building curriculums of health information that is needed in the areas of mental health, sexual and reproductive health, and sexual harassment and assault health. So traditionally, or in the past couple of years, CDI has gone into Dar es Salaam, has helped run clinics and workshops surrounding sexual and reproductive health, whatever it might be. Without the ability to do that this summer, what we have done is we've reached out to our partner, Surely Direct, who runs this phone application for students to access sort of traditional schooling materials, maths, geography, history, etc. And they have outreach to about 300,000 students, parents on the platform, teachers, and we are helping design a curriculum for these different health areas that they can use on their website. What we'll largely be doing is we'll be creating this curriculum, and then we'll be handing it off to the Kite side of our program in later September. And what they'll be doing is they'll be sourcing culturally appropriate healthcare information that resonates with secondary school students to actually be used on the website. Heading into the future, what we're hoping to do is create things like interactive quizzes, graphic, potentially novels even, really just making material that is accessible to secondary school students throughout Dar es Salaam and Tanzania more broadly. These are sort of the baseline that we're hoping to do with Surely Direct, and we're also potentially looking to work with one of their subsidiary organizations who focuses on women and their education around computer programming to help potentially design an application along with the education team to work on some of our own potential projects. So this is one area that we'll be working in through the summer and into the future. The other sort of main area that we've been working at and looking towards work this summer and into the future is through another partner organization called VESMA. So VESMA is an indoor air pollution solution that is non-electric. Essentially what it is it's a fan that sits in the window of a kitchen, living room, whatever it might be, and through a weighted pulley system is able to draw air pollutants out of households without needing electricity. Currently, the VESMA organization was developed through iTech at Cambridge. They are doing some field research at the moment up in Arusha in the north of Tanzania, and what we're hoping to do is bring their device down into Dar es Salaam and through Kite do on-the-ground research that's needed to figure out what kinds of needs people have in the area, what the design of the product should look like, whether or not the materials that are needed for building the project or for building the device and for maintaining the device are present within the area. And looking into the future, we'll be trying to figure out how we can effectively disseminate this, this product, whether or not there's a market for it, and how this might be used as a way to offer clean indoor air pollution systems in a cost-effective manner to a community who sort of desperately needs them. These indoor air pollutants are a major cause of chronic conditions and non-communicable disease in Tanzania and the developing world more broadly. So this is a really great opportunity to this summer sort of create a baseline of understanding of what is needed in the Dar es Salaam community, and then moving forward, how do you grow this product? How do you expand it into more households within the area? The final project stream that we're looking at are soap making clinics. Right now, we are looking to have these take place both potentially within school systems in Dar es Salaam and in the community more broadly for adults to take these classes. There's also the potential for us to combine our efforts with the entrepreneurship group and use these soap making products as things that might be able to generate small businesses, sale opportunities for people who are creating the soap products, And right now we're sort of in the process of researching what that might look like, whether or not there's a market for these products, and running the pilot projects this coming fall through the Kite organization to see what issues we might have, what things we might need to think about as we begin to scale these up to larger sizes. And I think what's really exciting about all of these projects, all three of them, is that they have a research layout, they have the partner organizations begin to be built in, but they are still in a developing stage in that if you were to take over the project as a project health director, you would have a lot of autonomy over what it is that you would be doing with it, how you would like to see the project carried through, the direction you would like to be seen it to. So you have both a little bit of a foundation to work on, where you'll be able to take the information we've gathered, take the research we've gathered, and turn the project into something that is your own and something that your team is excited about and can bring into the future. So I unfortunately do not have as professional of a final slide as Sophie, but if you would like to contact me, please feel free to reach out at any time to any member of the CDI community. They'll be more than happy to direct your questions to me. Happy to speak anytime. I'll also be around Cambridge if you'd rather meet in person, whatever it might be. But do look forward to hearing from you and can't wait for you to potentially be a part of this organization into the future.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Gerard. So that wraps up this kind of redo of our first half of our talk. So after this, I'll be handing over to Nikita, who on the recording that works. So I'll be switching over to Zoom. So yeah, over to Nikita on Zoom.
All right, can everyone see the screen? Alrighty. So just gonna go through this quite quickly. So the education project for this year started out looking very different. We had a bunch of plans and then a pandemic happened. And so we had to make other arrangements. So I would put a pivot in there between education and project. Just backspacing for a second, my name is Nikita. I'm the Education Project Director, and up until about a month ago, I was an MPhil student and I was studying education, globalization, and international development. So quite apt for this role, I guess. So the education project for this year it ended up having sort of two arms, two different sides. And what I'm going to do is talk you through mostly the rationale for how we got to these projects and then talk you through what it looks like. So the first one is called Compute Her. And to describe it very briefly, it's an online course to improve, right, is this in the way? It's an online course to improve the business and tech literacy of women who run or are in the process of setting up small businesses. Okay. So where did this project begin? We know that in Tanzania, more than half of small to medium-sized businesses are run by women, but there are a bunch of cultural and economic barriers that stop them from scaling these businesses up. So even though they make a massive contribution to the economy, there are obstacles that are stopping them from growing and moving forward. And so that sort of became the starting point for Compute Her. And this is not the first time that we're running this project. It was actually piloted for the first time in 2017. And it was run as in-person workshops, initially with out-of-school women. And it was teaching them the basics of how to access things like setting up an email ID, how do you access your email, how do you send and receive emails, how do you use Microsoft Word and Excel, and just a bunch of software that are useful and really necessary or like helpful to know in today's time. The kind of plan that we had was to expand on this and build on this and reach more women than we had in previous years, and to make it more sustainable, just because sustainability is very much at the heart of what CDI does. But coronavirus again became a bit of an issue, and so we couldn't really consider in-person workshops to be as feasible as they have been in past years. So we really needed to rethink how we were going to run this project. And so the question that really came to mind was, can we digitize this project? Can we move operations online while still delivering the same aims that we had in mind? And doing this, or thinking about it in this way, had a bunch of obvious benefits. A, we keep the momentum of the project going. We reach a lot more women than we have in the past. So when you're running in-person workshops, you reach, say, 40, 50, 60 women, but with an online platform, it's an exponentially higher number. And then you have easier monitoring. So when you're working online, or when you're monitoring an activity online, then you can sort of judge analytics, you can assess the demographics of your users. So you can answer questions like, who are the women who are using the platform? How old are they? How far into the course are they getting? Are they finishing it? Are they completing it properly? So that allows you to really keep on tweaking, and it's a constant feedback mechanism that keeps the project really active and constantly improving. And so this is the plan that we're currently working with. We're currently in year 1 of digitizing, and our aim for this year is really to lay the foundations for future teams to come in and have as much agency as possible in delivering the project as best as can possibly be. So our agenda for this year is, A, we take the curriculum that we've been using in previous years and we adapt it to a digital platform. We try and scope out the kind of the technicalities of what it would look like to turn this, to turn the content and deliver it in the form of an app, just because mobile penetration is really high in Tanzania. So that works out quite well. And there's loads of scope for working with partners on the ground in order to make this really accessible and affordable for the stakeholders that for the beneficiaries we're trying to reach. We want to scope out and establish partnerships and secure funding. So in the past, Dads had mentioned Tanzania being one organization that we've handed over projects to in the past. And they are someone that we're looking to work with at the moment, because they do a lot of really good work on this front. And so our aim for this year is really to secure these partnerships so that future teams already have all of those things in place. And finally, we want to pilot a prototype with previous year's participants, which means we take the sort of fundamental prototype of the content that we've developed, and we want to pilot it in a kind of focus group with previous year's participants of Compute Her. And we take the feedback from that pilot to then revise the curriculum more, and we build up the platform, we iron out the glitches, and we finally launch the app. And then it becomes a kind of self-sustaining model, and it's a constant feedback loop of you assess how the app is received, how users are engaging with it, and you can keep it current and keep growing the medium. And there's even potential to expand beyond Dar es Salaam to a wider geographical area. So that's the first project. The second one, at the moment, it's very much in its nascent stage, because the idea came up when COVID-19 hit and schools in Tanzania in Dar es Salaam were closed down. And so at the moment, we're calling it the Radio Project. And the blurb for this one would be, you design a radio program to encourage and support parental engagement in children's schooling. So how did we get this idea? What was our starting point? So we had one problem, which was when lockdown happened, schools were closed down, and there was a massive disparity in who was affected, like which children's learning was affected and which children's learnings was unaffected by the lockdown happening. So in relatively more privileged families, there was practically no effect on the learning of students, because they could still access things like Google Teams and they could access online classrooms. And so it was relatively easy to, the studies and the academics took less of a hit. But for a large chunk of the population, for a lot of children, there was a massive backlog in learning because of schools closing down. So that was the first problem. The second was that when schools closed, children did have a lot more time at home with their parents, but research says that in general, there's a fairly low level of engagement among parents in their children's education. So the kind of role that parents play in children's education is sort of limited to paying fees. So it's a more functional role at the moment, but we know that when parents are engaged in their children's learning, it has a lot of positive effects on outcomes. And the third problem being, currently schools have opened up again in Dar es Salaam, which is good, but there is always a possibility that something like this will happen again. And so given the uncertainty that these problems created, the question we were asking in this case was, can we somehow encourage more engagement among parents in communities in Dar es Salaam? And the reason we were looking at radio as a solution is pretty much because it's a very popular medium, and a lot of people listen to it. It's accessible, and it's versatile. So there's many ways in which you can use it. But in order to start navigating in like trying to develop the project, there were lots of questions that came to mind, and in order to design the initiative, you have to first understand exactly what the problem is and what the context is. So the questions that we first need to answer before we come up with the project is, in what ways are parents currently involved in their children's education? To what extent are they engaged in their children's education, and why? If it's high or low, is it because of the work they're doing? Is it because of the extent to which parents are educated themselves? Is it because of cultural norms? Why is the situation the way it is? Do parents even want more support with participating in their children's learning? So that sort of has to do with culture and mindset of the people that we're looking to work with. And if they do want more support, then in what form would that be? And what would parents themselves like their children to be learning? Is it literacy? Is it numeracy? Or is it beyond just reading and writing and numbers and arithmetic? Is it more about life skills and learning to manage yourself, learning to organize yourself in a more value-based education? Is that their interest? And another question would be, what role does radio currently play in children's learning? So if we understand all of these things, like until we understand all of these things, we can't really effectively design an initiative that tries to tackle the problem until we fully understand what the problem is. And so the natural first step for this project is research. So you ask all of these questions, you design a study that tries to find answers to all these questions. And so that's where we're currently at. So this project is very much in its nascent stages because it's only just begun. But the plan of action for this one is that this year, or this kind of implementation phase, we're dedicating to designing and implementing the research, gathering the data that answers all of these questions that we're asking. And based on the information we gather, we decide a plan of action in terms of the best way to move forward. Whether that means creating supplementary material through the radio that will fill the educational gaps for children and also encourage parents to then be involved in these activities. So those are the kind of questions we're asking, but we know roughly what our aims are. Based on the research results, our sort of direction will vary, but our aims will remain to generate awareness about the really important role that parents play in children's education, and in order to provide the support and the resources for them to be able to do that, to be able to be a part of their children's education. So it's not just telling people what they're doing wrong or simply telling people that they need to do better or be more engaged. It's also to provide, to understand the problem and then provide the practical tools for them to be able to do so. What this means in practice for the incoming education team or whoever takes this over is that they're going to have a lot more wiggle room in terms of creativity in order to really design this project and to spearhead it and take it in a direction that they want. Because with Compute Her, it's still a relatively more well-formed project because we've been working on it for a while. But because this is relatively new, there's a lot of scope for playing with it, basically. So those are, that's what the education project looks like for this year.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nikita. That was really interesting. It's interesting that education iterating on previous pilot implementations and improving on these ideas for modern times, but also, yeah, that's very much the start of another project cycle with this research. Izzy from Entrepreneurship is now speaking, so take it away, Izzy.
Hi. Do we know if I can screen share? Ooh, okay.
Should be able to.
Yeah, perfect. Is that working? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Screen.
Perfect. And then we'll just do that. Okay, cool. So just a really short one from me, so we can hopefully get some questions in. So my name is Izzy. I run or co-direct the Entrepreneurship project, and I just finished my MPhil in Development Studies, which is Cambridge's International Development Masters. So when I joined the Entrepreneurship project, it was kind of in a period of regeneration, I suppose. We just handed over both of our longer term projects to local partners, and so there was a really kind of wide open field for me and my co-director to ideate a new project. And we really spent a long time looking through the learnings that we had from previous projects. The Entrepreneurship project has run, I think, 3 or 4 previous projects, and we really considered the feedback that we'd gotten from those, as well as working with the Entrepreneurship director from Kite, our partner in Dar es Salaam. Bryson had he'd been a volunteer on the project last year, so he had some really good insight into, you know, what was appreciated with that project and what we could maybe build on. And so out of all of that reflection period, we came up with a new project, which we're calling Tanzania CAN, which stands for Consult, Act, Network, and that kind of represents the phases of the project that I'll go through in a second. Generally, the idea that we try and keep the bigger picture throughout the entire Entrepreneurship project stream is to foster creativity, innovation amongst young Tanzanian professionals, so largely, you know, sort of high school and university graduates, who are, we believe, you know, best placed to formulate innovative business ideas, drive community-based development. So, you know, they are the people who are best aware of what the community needs, what the community has already as assets, and how we can really invest in those to produce new opportunities and essentially to make the most out of this rapid economic development that Tanzania is currently undergoing. Obviously, that's been impacted by COVID, but is expected to bounce back really strongly to about 5% next year, GDP growth. And alongside that, it's got this incredibly growing population as well, one of the sort of largest, most or fastest growing populations in the world, which has really led to a great demand for jobs, especially amongst high school and university graduates, which has led to unemployment rates, which, I mean, they don't seem maybe as bad as they potentially are, because actually that hides a lot of underemployment for these graduates. And so the idea is really to allow those people to forge their own paths, see what can be done in their communities, and support them as they grow into a business model that will kind of, you know, support the needs of the community, at the same time as making the most of the rapid economic development that's undergoing, and ensuring that that economic development is really felt throughout every level of society, not just, you know, at the highest, most corporate levels. And so Tanzania CAN, which is the project that we've been working on designing this year, is yet to be implemented because of COVID. It was supposed to sort of have its first annual cycle this year, but as a result, we've had really lots and lots of time to think about how we want this to go, really focus on project design, and as a result, it's in a really, really good place, ready to be implemented next year. I guess one thing that could be said is that for the Entrepreneurship team for next year, there's not going to be too much work maybe in Michaelmas for some fundraising, because we've got it all pretty much laid out in terms of project design, plenty and plenty of material to pass over to you that my team has been working hard on this year. And so the project Tanzania CAN is an accelerator project, and it will seek out young entrepreneurs who've already established a business, a small venture, who are under the age of 30, and then support them as they try and scale up their business, kind of really working on a tailored, bespoke level to figure out what their barriers to growth are, how we can overcome them, and really grow a sustainable business for these people. And so we've written out our survey, and we're about to go out and run that survey as soon as possible, as soon as it's safe to do so, to find interested entrepreneurs and to see what help or how we can best match consultants to them. The consultants are going to be they're going to be recruited out of business schools in Cambridge, so the George Business School, and in Dar es Salaam. One consultant from each will work together, and we're going to match those. Each, like a team of 2 consultants will be matched to each entrepreneur, and they'll work with them for about a year, and that's in the growth phase, to really grow the business, scale it up, figure out what the exact barriers to growth are for that enterprise and how we can overcome them. After that year has passed, they will then graduate into a peer network of fellow entrepreneurs, previous graduates from our organisation, from the growth phase as well, and we're seeing that as sort of the most sustainable and long-term aspect of the project, and that will just naturally grow every year as each cycle of entrepreneurs graduate through the growth phase, and they'll be able to work together. Because I mean, having some experience working in social enterprise in the UK, I know that one of the main issues that's often faced is that entrepreneurship is such an individual drive and passion, and often that work is undertaken in silos as a result. And we see bringing together this network as a way to create a really organic network for entrepreneurs to help each other, to discuss issues and also opportunities, to provide links between the two. Maybe somebody needs something that someone else can provide in their own enterprise, and so on. And so that's how we're seeing the project running, and it will be the job of the next entrepreneurship team to really implement that, working with the business schools in both countries alongside Kite, to bring this together for the first phase, which should be really exciting. We also have a small a side project that we've been working on due to the COVID pivot, which is that we're also supporting another organisation who are called Media Tanzania in their soap making livelihood project. So we have the Kite soap making project. We also then have this soap making project with Media that we're supporting as the entrepreneurship team. It's being run as a microfinancing scheme for women, specifically for young mothers under the age of 25, to provide a household income. And we're basically working with them. It's a project they've entirely designed and are seeking to implement, and we're working with them to basically provide any remote support that we can, so fundraising, proofreading of documents, trying to make connections that might be beneficial with any contacts that we might have as an organisation. And that's been really interesting as well. It's given us an opportunity to branch outside of the Dar es Salaam based work, since they're based in another area of the country. And that will be up to you sort of as you go through the next team. That will be up to them how they proceed with that, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth in that partnership. So that's kind of the other thing that we're doing, which is I think both very exciting. So that's it, I think, from the entrepreneurship side of things. Thank you. I'll try and stop screen sharing. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, I'll give you a minute to do that. No, thanks so much. The entrepreneurship scheme, entrepreneurship can affect every part of society that you'd want to impact. So you have social enterprise and education, WASH, whatever. And I'm hoping that this is going to be a long-term project with the Tanzania CAN, and I hope it comes to fruition as you envision it. Okay, so we're a bit over time, but I think we'll stay on for another maybe 10 minutes if committee willing. I hope. I'm sorry to keep you here pass through all the technical glitches and such. But if you have any questions, or if Laura, if you've had any questions through the Google form that we sent out earlier, please fire away and we can answer those now.
Yeah, so we've had one through the Google form. So if we start with that, what people can think of any and send them through on the chat if they think of any questions they have. So we were asked, do all of the executive committee take part in the trip to Dar es Salaam, or just those who are directly involved with various projects? So Tads, I'll need your guidance here, but I think all of the executive committee, bar the fundraising director and the research director, head out to Tanzania.
Yeah, so historically, pretty much everyone, including fundraising director, actually, but it's kind of negotiable based on position. The research director tends not to, and same with volunteer training and the alumni officer, they tend not to not go on the summer trip. In terms of our actual plans for travel, which I tried to put a preamble on the recruitment document and at the introduction here, is that travel may not be possible for the next 12 months, but the project period may look very different from our side, in the sense that we may still try to create either a remote office environment, or perhaps set up an office based in the UK or in Cambridge rather than out in Dar es Salaam. And we still want to make sure that, although we're not doing the summer trip proper this year, or unlikely to unless a vaccine is developed for COVID, that we create a rewarding work environment where we can build a lot of personal development skills through the CDI experience. But yeah, the roles that tend not to go on the summer trip, summer project period, are research director, volunteer training, and the alumni officer. But everyone else usually comes along.
Great, okay. I've just put a contact information form, as we're not having any other questions coming through at the moment. I've popped a contact information form on the chat. So if anyone wants to leave their, well, please do leave your email address, well, the information that's asked for in that form, and then we can add you to the mailing list, and you'll get notified and get updates when we send them out. Also, we'd love you to like us on Facebook and follow what we're up to. And then I'll also just link you all of this will go up on the Facebook event later as well once we've ended the meeting, but those are the recruitment information documents. So everything you need to know about whether you want to apply or find out more about CDI is on that first link, and the second link is the application form. But yeah, if you have any more questions, you can keep sending them through the Q&A form, or just ask them to us on Facebook. I think that's everything that we need to go through, really. So
yeah, sounds good.
Well, I can wrap up. So yeah, thank you everyone for bearing with us through all the hiccups, all the glitches. We're better in the sustainable development field than we are on online meetings, I can promise you that. But yeah, thank you for bearing with us, and I hope it's been insightful and useful. Thank you, committee, for your time and for your fantastic presentations. It was great of you to give up your evenings. And yeah, we'll look forward to hearing from you all soon, hopefully. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.